Welcome to a new episode of Let Me Be Frank, and the first new episode in quite a while. Today we're going to be looking at a game called Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. There are a plethora of quirky indie games, but with a title like this, I had to take a look. Also, one week the Epic Game Store gave it away for free. The plot of the game is that Turnip Boy has failed to pay taxes on his home and is evicted by Mayor Onion. The player sets out to settle their massive debt with Mayor Onion and reclaim their home. I suppose not even living mutant vegetables can escape the IRS. Turnip Boy's world gives off a charming and eccentric atmosphere, but there is more than meets the eye. This game is an homage to 2D top-down Zelda games while maintaining its own identity. Like the hero of Hyrule, Turnip Boy is a silent protagonist. However, he does respond in conversation with punctuation bubbles such as multiple question marks or exclamation marks. This causes our main character to come off as fairly expressive despite the blank look on his face. The game controls well, but I would recommend using a controller. My brain couldn't get a handle on using the keyboard, but that's more of a personal issue than the game's fault. Movement feels nice and using items is fluid. There's an action button which is used to attack or use items. I would have preferred attack and item usage to be two different buttons, since swapping between items and weapons feels clunky. There is a bit of relief in regards to this, as a button to cycle through items and weapons is available. As for other buttons, you get a trip button that works as a dodge that is useful in boss fights. If only my brain could have utilized it better. I went into this game completely blind and had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was pleasantly surprised when it was reminiscent of top-down Zelda. It even references Zelda when you get the sword. Much like top-down Zelda, you'll be slashing your way through a grassy overworld and delving into dungeons to acquire new items and progress the story. Turnip Boy even uses hearts for health and increases his health meter upon completing a dungeon. He also uses bomb flowers just like a certain hero of time. The game is an easy difficulty. It's hard to get lost since the game does a good job of telling the player where to go. There's a variety of difficulty for puzzles in the game. Some of the early puzzles are painfully simple, while some of the later puzzles are delightfully clever. I do have a couple of nitpicks about this game though. There is one particular enemy that grabs you. If you get close and hit the enemy, it's hard to tell if you're taking damage or the enemy is taking damage, because it flashes the same color as the player taking damage. Some visual clarity here would have been nice. It also feels like invincibility frames are either too short or non-existent. I'd get cornered by the second boss and get bodied since I couldn't get away. There are a variety of enemies in the game. It starts out simple with worms that crawl toward you at a snail's pace. As the game progresses, you encounter harder enemies, such as an enemy that inverts your controls. Side note, I absolutely hated that. The bosses start simple, but get progressively more difficult. I wouldn't say any are outright hard though. The items are fine, but kind of underwhelming. Most of the items are underwhelming due to being environmentally focused and not new equipment for Turnip Boy. For example, in Zelda, Link would get something like a boomerang that could damage or stun enemies, or even retrieve items. In Turnip Boy, you get the ability to water a plant and create platforms by using existing equipment. However, I do like that items stay useful later in the game. You'll use everything you acquire all the way into the last dungeon of the game. Some puzzle solutions will require a combination of items acquired early in the game with newer items. Completionists rejoice there are collectibles throughout the game. Most are lore-related texts that can be ripped up after reading. None of the collectible documents are required to finish the game, however, finding all the documents will allow the player to access the true ending. You can also collect hats for Turnip Boy to wear. While the gameplay is similar to old-school Zelda, it does set itself apart with light-hearted humor. The humor is a major appeal of the game, and for the most part, it does land. Humor is always subjective, so it's hard to convey if it's good or not. If the title of the game at least gave you a chuckle, you'll probably enjoy the humor. I find the music to be mostly enjoyable. It has a chill EDM sound that I can appreciate. However, there are some tracks that have awkward loops. The track for the farmhouse dungeon abruptly stops, is silent for a few seconds, then starts over with the percussive intro. It's not egregious, but it did distract me more than once. Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion is a short game. 2 hours short. It does a good job of making the player want more. Luckily, there is a sequel, Turnip Boy Robs a Bank. I'll have to give this one a look at some point. Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion is a good game. It's $15 on Steam, however, I would recommend waiting for a sale. If you want a short, fun game that harkens back to 2D Zelda, I would highly recommend it. I'm Frank Fortune, and this has been Let Me Be Frank. I relish you being here, and I look forward to seeing you next time, my friends. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video.